Hey, Mikey, I've got a joke for you. So a man walks into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender says it's $5. So the man throws 20 quarters down on the floor. The annoyed bartender picks him up and serves him his drink. The next day, the man comes back and does the same thing. And the day after that, each time, the bartender stooped to pick up the payment before serving the beer. On the fourth day, he hands the bartender a $10 bill. Seizing his chance for revenge, the bartender throws down 20 quarters and shouts, "Here's your change, asshole." But the man just looks at the coins on the floor and says, "You know what? Give me another beer." Greetings, lovely listeners. It is me, your beloved and slightly off-kilter host, Mr. Robin, coming to you digitally from the technologically advanced Studio B, located in the now infamous compound just outside of Fargo, Oklahoma. And as per usual, I am joined by my trusty sidekick, my co-hosting confidant, my comedic collaborator, and my all-time best bud, the one and only Mikel Robinson, a.k.a. Mikey-on-the-Mic. Give him a holler, Mikey.
Holler. Yay! Woo!
Oh, wait.
You have it turned down.
There we go. I need to hand the board over to you, I think.
I told you that already.
Yeah, I know.
So I hollered and made my own clapping noises and sounds.
Yeah.
So
And it
there's
sounded
that.
very good.
You're
Very
welcome. I've practiced
There you go.
very hard.
And let's not forget my cousin Fred and his ever-evolving love interest, Magdalene. She's famously known, dare I say, infamously known in the world of vehicle repossessions as Repo Babe. They're both here with us today, adding their unique brand of chaos to our podcast recording. And if that's not enough for you, you can keep up with their shenanigans on my sporadically updated blog, the Cosmic City Blog, which you can find at cosmic-city-blog.com.
And be ever so entertained.
Absolutely. Mikey, it's been said that if you give a man a beer, he'll waste an hour. But if you teach a man to brew, he'll waste a lifetime. Well, we have the perfect guest for our podcast today, my longtime friend, Steve Goetzinger. We go way back, like when we were still watching Johnny Quest on television and trying to figure out if Diane Carmody's boobs were real or if she just stuffed her bra with tissues. But now Steve is not just an attorney. He's also a barbecue fiend, a brewing expert, a distilling connoisseur, an artist, and the former Lord High Mayor and current City Council member of the city of Nichols Hills, Oklahoma. Basically, he's every parent's nightmare of what their kids will grow up to be, an overachiever. Joining us from his home in, coincidentally, Nichols Hills, let's give a warm Mr. Robin's Hood podcast. Welcome to the owner and operator of MadHopper Brewing Company, Steve Goetzinger. Okay, that's all you get. Welcome, Steve.
Yes.
You may
Hi.
Welcome, Steve. You may live to regret this podcast. Everyone does.
And they don't have
I'm
a
looking
problem.
forward to it.
Yeah. They don't have a problem telling us either.
Yeah.
Like, that was horrible. No. Hey, Steve. How are you?
Hi, Mikey. Very well. Very well. Good talking to you.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you. We both happen to be beer connoisseurs ourselves, as you well know. So this is going to be just as fun for us and just as horrible for you.
Great. Great.
So we thought we'd start, if you could just kind of talk a little bit about how you became interested in beer making. And I know that goes way back.
Well, it does. We had visited earlier a week or so ago, and I told you about my foray into it in the 1980s, but then I remembered that actually what preceded that, it was in high school. And I don't know if you recall that the grocery store at that time in Woodward would sell cans of malt, and it was a malt syrup. And on top of that, they would have a little yeast packet. And I remember shopping there in high school thinking, what in the world is that stuff? So I bought some. And actually, our high school biology teacher, I think, was a little interested in it as well. And so he let me try to brew something with that in the science lab at the high school, which did not turn out well. It was terrible. But it was sort of my first foray into watching yeast do its work with malted beverages.
I see.
Yeah.
So, wow, that really does go back a long way.
Yeah, a long time.
So were you out of college and kind of...
Well, yeah, I was out of college and law school, and my wife and I had purchased a home, and we didn't have any kids at the time, so we had a lot of free time, and I thought that I would resume my efforts to make beer, and as I told you the other day, it was a failure as well. When you brew beer and you really don't know what you're doing, at that time I was using malt extract. And my first brewing disaster was the dreaded boil over, which is something that any home brewer that you'll talk to will know you should not do, because what happens is that you put this very sticky syrup into a pot. And if you don't watch it as it boils with water, it will boil over and makes the worst mess. I can't even tell you how hard it is to get this carbon. Once it turns black, it's impossible to get it off your kitchen stove. And I tried that a couple of times, and unbeknownst to me, at that time there was so little material about brewing beer. I was sort of winging it, and I thought that, in making this batch of beer, it would be best if I put it in the hottest part of our house on the west, with a west window, and let it get up, 90 to 100 degrees, which was absolutely the worst thing you could do, particularly with the lager that I was trying to make. And it was, in consequence, a total failure. And so, I turned my attention, I gave up for a while, and I thought, I'm going to set this aside because it's just not working. And I switched to trying a new house. We, at that point, had children, and I did have a little free time. And so my first foray then was, I thought, well, I would make wine. In Nichols Hills, we have several parks here that used to have a lot of dandelions. And so I got the crazy idea one Saturday that I'd enlist my young children's help, and we went out and picked several baskets of dandelion. And I don't think that the internet, if it was around, there wasn't much out there, but I somehow found a recipe for dandelion wine and made it. And once again, I had a boil over. And so the next weekend, we had to go back out and pick another batch of dandelions. And I remember the teachers were wondering why their fingers were all yellow on the following Monday.
See, this is why you were never nominated for Father of the Year.
Exactly. So we did make it. That time I did make the wine, and it was just okay. I mean, it was pretty bad, to be quite truthful, but you could at least drink it, and so
that's all that matters.
And from there, then I actually started making grape-based wines, and did that for a while, and had a little accident there, and so my wife said no more spirit making or wine or beer in the house. And so I was puzzled over that as to what to do. And then I found that there was actually a better way to make beer. And at that point in time in Oklahoma City, there was a real interest in brewing beer at home. And so a couple of stores opened up here in Oklahoma City that actually had good brewing supplies. And that's when I turned from making beer from an extract to actually using all grain, and I would have the grain ground, and I had a process at that time that I would do it on my back porch or in my garage, and from there, then I ended up buying another machine that would just do everything all at once, and so at that point, I was brewing beer in my garage probably every other month, and just trying all. I probably, golly, I don't know. I probably have made 30 to 50 different beer types, and I kept meticulous notes about what I liked and what I didn't, and then got into lagering and my beer improved. It improved so much that, I even had an Oktoberfest one year and had my beer on tap, and everybody at the party just loved it. And so it was fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like Oktoberfest beer.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, it's my favorite time of the year.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, my dad used to work at the Oktoberfest festival in Tulsa. He worked in one of the tents, like he cooked or something. I just remember he would give us tickets to go play on all the rides and stuff, and we just kind of had free reign of the Tulsa Oktoberfest. I have really fond memories of that. Although you couldn't do that now. Can't leave your kids just to run around Oktoberfest in Tulsa. But that was in the 90s, so things were different then. But you just reminded me of that story.
Oh, it's great. We have one. We did have one, and it actually they discontinued it about 4 or 5 years ago. But there was a big one in Choctaw, Oklahoma, which is a small town east of Oklahoma City, and they would have thousands of people, and they lined up, German bands from all over Texas and in that area, and brought them up, and it was just a lot of fun. We would go out there every year. Have German beer and food,
which is some of the best beer is some German beer.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I think so.
I agree.
So, Steve, as you were explaining, you've done a lot. You have extensively experimented with different types of beer over the years.
I have.
What varieties are easier to make or more difficult to make, and do you have a favorite?
I have a favorite, and I when I started, I really started making probably the most difficult type of beer, which is German lagers, because they're pretty elegant, and you have to, they take a lot more time than an ale would. In England, ales were the most popular sorts of beers, and principally because you don't have to age them as long, and you can make a beer from the beginning to pour in 20 days, 25 days. Whereas if you really want to do it right with a German lager, an Oktoberfest, or even a Pilsner, which originally came from Czechoslovakia, that requires more time. And if you want to really do it right, you make it. You have to. The temperatures are more controlled with your lagers, and you have to ferment them at temperatures of typically around 55 to 60 degrees, whereas an ale you can let ride a little higher, about even up to room temperature. In some instances, even higher temperatures. But the result is that it's a slower fermentation process, and then you have to put it into a keg or into some holding device and let it age. And to really make good lager beers, you're going to 60 days is quite common. Whereas again, on the ales, you've got, from beginning to end 20 days. So your total time with lager might be 90 days. Now, if you're going to make an Oktoberfest, those were typically historically made in March and then put into the side of the mountain in Germany and kept at low temperatures. And so if you want to make a good Oktoberfest, you want to make it in March or April, and you will just age it until, the end of September, at which time you can tap it, and it's good that way. So
I see.
Interesting. So it's April, or I guess when this drops, it won't be, huh? So there'll be a month too late to start.
Yeah, we haven't done it yet at the brewery. We started a brewery last year, and we've been concentrating mainly on ales because, from an economic standpoint, you make more money serving ales because you don't have the wait time for lagering that you would. So, so we haven't made an Oktoberfest yet, but maybe we need to. It's still April.
Yeah. Well, and it's always something you can do down the road. I know, like at the bars that I've worked at, we kind of just have Oktoberfest for that season anyhow. So kind of just make enough for when it's gone, and this is a special thing. Yeah. And people come out and get excited about it.
Yeah.
I know I would. I'd drive to Oklahoma City to just drink your Oktoberfest, Steve, for real. So let me know when that happens.
Okay. Done.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, I was wondering if you could run through the timeline for your brewery, from conception to opening the doors. I know you had a lot of angst and pain trying to get the equipment off a dock somewhere in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Really, actually, the angst began when I bought these two buildings in a part of Oklahoma City that I thought needed to be redeveloped, and it's really beginning to work that way, and we've got a lot of momentum. But that was the start, and I sort of bought those on a lark, about 6 years ago. And I had an eye as to one of the buildings. I had the eye that I was going to put a brewery in. And so I started courting a number of brewers here in town, trying to convince them to open up or, come over here and put a brewery in. And, it was, the buildings at that time were pretty rough, very rough. And I couldn't really convince many people to get over there. And I did a lot of courting, and eventually I met a couple of guys that had an interest in coming over to this area. And so, we talked and went in, and that took about a year. And so then they were ready to go, and then the pandemic hit. And of course that just put everything behind.
Right.
And I would say probably at least a year, half or two before they, were ready to go ahead and sign on this thing. And my deal with them is I said, look, I not only do I want to be a landlord, but I want to be an owner of this thing just because I'm interested in it. And so we eventually got a deal put together, and at that time it was shortly, in my memory, it's shortly after, kind of in the midst of the pandemic, or a little bit later, maybe it was sort of winding down. Then we purchased this equipment, and we felt like the best deal that we could get was to buy some equipment that was made on spec to our dimensions in China. And so that took almost a year for this equipment to be made, and then the equipment was shipped to Los Angeles and stuck at the port for about 6 months. It was just the most aggravating thing it could be. We were ready to move forward to get this thing going, there was just a huge log jam. I don't know if you remember reading about that.
Oh, yeah.
But
Sure.
yeah, it was terrible. And, we just couldn't get it out. It was stuck behind, thousands of others containers that were in front of us. And so eventually the log jam broke, and we had the equipment was sent by rail actually to Dallas from LA. And then we had trucks go down and pick up the equipment, move it up to Oklahoma City, and then eventually we got it into the brewery, to that brew house. And at that time, we were also in the midst of working with renovating the property at the tail.
Mm-hmm.
We were at the tail end of that, so that really coincided with the timing, so we could get the equipment in. So.
And then, as I recall, the building that you use as the brewery was actually a theater at one time. Is that right?
It was, yeah. That thing it was originally built as a theater, and the best I can tell, sometime in the 1920s. And this was Britton, Oklahoma, was at that time an independent, separate city in Oklahoma City, and so this was the original movie theater was put in there. Interestingly, then after sometime around in the 50s, the owners of the theater there decided they needed a bigger movie theater. So they built one across the street and changed the name. The original theater was the Ritz at mine, and then they took that name and moved opened up the larger theater, and then they ran B movies in my building, and then eventually it was owned by a dentist whose son actually was a friend of mine in college, and I knew him well, and it was just ironic that I ended up with that building. And then finally it was acquired by a local architect, and then after he passed away, I bought the building from his wife. So, yeah.
Well, there's beautiful brick on the building on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very striking, I think, and you guys kept that aesthetic. I think that was really cool when we, Robin and I visited. It's got a nice...
it's funny. Yeah, Mike, downtown there, it reminded me a lot of Fargo as it is now.
Right.
And I mean, when we started, it was really just about like that. It was, and I haven't been to Fargo in years, but I presume that it's the downtown is probably unoccupied, and the buildings
there are a few buildings that people have moved in. They're trying to hang on to the place, but there's not a lot.
Yeah, not a lot of life, but you are bringing that part back to life. When we were there, it seemed like it, and they were redoing some of the sidewalks, which will be amazing because better and nicer access to your facilities there is what you need as well. So
yes, we are very grateful with what Oklahoma City has done. And when we first acquired, I acquired 2 buildings, and then I got some other partners in, and actually we acquired the newer Ritz Theater, which is now houses the distillery, Woodworks Distilling Company. And at the time we bought the new Ritz Theater building, then we contacted David Holt, who had just been elected, and went down and met with him. And that was the beginning of that. It took 5 years or more for Oklahoma City to get some money together, but we're very grateful. They're putting over $2 million of streetscaping and so forth to spiff up what was really a neglected area in Oklahoma City. So, and we're in the midst of it. Yet I think we've got probably 4 or 5 more months, but it's going to be great. Can't wait.
Well, I think that they would see the potential that you guys are serious about what you're doing down there, and as a city that's smart. Yeah. Let's help them. And it's it sounds like a little bit of a historic part, so it's nice to hear that.
Yeah, definitely it is. And The most soul satisfying thing is, going over there on a weekend or even a weeknight and seeing cars parked up and down the street there,
Yeah,
which,
right.
a few years ago, it was just a ghost town, really.
Mhm.
No one wanted to go there. So,
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be changing. And the next thing that we kind of want to talk about is one of the reasons they need to visit MadHopper Brewing and check it out for themselves, because we were up there and we tried several different of your brewed beers, and they were really, really good. And we were going to talk a little bit about that. So,
sure.
Well, first off, I have to tell you, I've never, ever been a fan of IPA. But that IPA that had the basil
yes.
mixed into it,
Yes.
man, that
Yes.
was freaking special.
It's different.
It was different.
Yeah.
It was very, very good.
Good. Well, I'm glad you liked it. That Todd O'Daniel is the architect of that recipe, and he is the principal owner of the brewery. And he had, as I did, it has a select handful of recipes that had worked for him and that he had developed, and so that's his signature one. And yeah, it's quite good. We sell a lot of it. People do like it. So.
Well, I'm a fan of IPA, so me loving it's not as big as Robin. I think that says a lot, because IPAs, or Indian Pale Ales, for people that don't know what that means exactly, they're very hoppy. There's a lot of hops in it, and so a lot of people don't enjoy them. So, but what Todd did with that recipe, I mean, he even pulled Robin from the dark side of not liking them to liking them, and with basil of all things.
Yeah.
Like, I remember you guys were trying to get me to figure out what it was, and I'm really bad at this game. Brett knows. He's always like, "What's that taste like?" And I'll just say something off the wall, but I would have never guessed basil.
Yeah, it's a good recipe, and you're right. I had an aversion to IPAs for a long time, but once you sort of dive into more hoppy things, and it's then you get hooked. It can really turn you around. So yeah, I'm glad that Robin has seen the light.
Right? Yes, me too.
So then we got. You may have already have left. I don't remember, but Mercedes behind the bar offered us the loaded stout, but she'd only sell it to us in small glasses because of the alcohol content.
Right. And there was twofold reason for that. One is a very high alcohol ABV content on that beer, and two, because it's so high on ABV, we use a ton of grain to make that beer. I mean, as you can imagine, it's just if you were making something with sugar, a cake, and you needed something really sweet you would use more sugar. And so with that beer, we have to use a lot of grain, which we extract the sugar from, and then it ferments, and hence you get the higher alcohol by volume content.
Okay.
And so, but it's a lot more expensive for us to make. So that's why we do it that way. It's both. You don't want your patrons drinking, not knowing how strong it really is, and then also it's just the economics of it too. So,
well, we I think Mikey had a couple of glasses of that, and
whatever.
I finally decided it was time to leave when she fell off the stool.
Not true. When I beat Robin at Battleship.
Yeah, we played a round of Battleship while we were sitting there.
Oh, good.
I got my ass kicked.
Good.
No, it was actually
Mikey,
a really close game, but
I did tell Todd the other day that we're going to need to get a dartboard, and I've already shown him the pictures that you showed me. I think that's our next step. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
So
we played some darts last night, and Brett won once and I won. We're pretty excited. Darts is always fun. Then we went and watched a local band too. drank some beer. So yeah, it's definitely something that the kids are doing. I say the kids.
All the kids are doing it. Yeah. So then the final one that we tried while we were there was the Goetzinger lager.
Yes.
And that was special. I got to tell you, I've always been a big fan of lager anyway. But
I'm glad
the citrus finish on that was really good.
It is a good one.
That was my recipe, and one thing that we found though that's really when you scale up a recipe, and I had no idea, but it is not linear. So I had a system here in my garage that I can make 5 gallons of beer, but when you go about making 120 gallons in a batch, it's the ratios are not linear, and so what works in 5 gallons doesn't work for 120 gallons, and so it's all right now. We're still working on that because you can overhop it or underhop it, and it's just I was surprised. I thought it would be easy, and Todd is of course the master of this system that you've seen, and it's quite complicated. And so I'm glad you liked it, and we're working on that. Also, he just made another beer. My grandson's birthday is next Saturday, and so my son is having a birthday party there for him. Adults, a lot of adults, of course, and their children invited, and so they're making a special IPA for that for his birthday, and it's called The Clock Strikes 2. And mainly, it's my grandson is just infatuated with clocks, and so he's turning 2 on next Saturday. So they've got a special IPA that Todd made for that, which we're excited about that, and can't wait to have that put on tap too.
Oh, that's cool. So, well, I noticed. I think Mercedes mentioned while we were there that you guys had a few parties in the place. And you're allowing children in there, which I think is just fine.
Todd, he wanted this to be just kind of the neighborhood thing that everyone's welcome. We've had we've had several venues for ranging from corporate things to doctors having parties to birthday parties and such. And so we want it to be something for everyone. So
great.
Well, I think that's cool. Because that's what I knew what kind of license you guys had gotten by the fact that you were able to have kids under the age of 21 in there, and I thought, well, that's a great idea. That's what a lot of restaurants do as well. But I always have to pull this part in because I'm interested in the way that you brew beer and just the process, because to me it's like I always say, all these things are art forms, and it sounds like it's one that you've spent time perfecting. When you were talking about that the ratios, it's not linear, my husband's like, that's the same with baking. And I just thought that was interesting, how those things can kind of overlap in a sense. It's very similar.
Yes.
Well, is it like a math sort of formula, or is it trial and error?
No, well, it's basically an art and not a science. There is some trial and error. For example, the Goetzinger, I had told Todd the batch before, I said I thought was a little bit too sweet and needed to have a little more body to it, which means during the mashing process that we mashed it at too high of a temperature. And then when mashing is when you put all the grain in with the water, and then you heat it up at certain levels, which then extracts the sugars from it. And so he lowered the temperature by 5 degrees, and then I felt like it didn't have enough in the body, and the sweetness maybe wasn't enough.
You're too damn
so they're
picky.
mixing.
Right.
No, my God, if we're going to do this, it can be right.
Right.
And So we're going to increase the temperature next time we make it and see what we come out with. Yeah, there is some trial and error here for sure. But yeah, it's fun.
So was there anything else that the brewery offers right now that we didn't sample?
Well, we do serve wine, and that is a component of what Abel will let us do, and
Right.
with the statutes. That is what we can do is we can serve our beer that we make and wine, and that is it. But we do recognize that some people don't like beer. In fact, Todd made, and he's still making this, is a hop water beer. It's just not a beer; it's just hopped water. And so if you don't want to drink something alcoholic, but you still want to have that flavor of the hops,
Right.
you can have a seltzer water infused with the hops. It's really good. It's
Yeah, I want to
tasty.
try that because
Yeah.
that's interesting. Well, I like the fact that you have a non-alcoholic option as well, because
Sure.
there are people that enjoy the taste of beer but can't have the alcohol that's in it. So
Right.
and sometimes it's health reasons and sometimes it's other reasons.
Sure.
But it's just like being able to go drink a soda and
Right.
it be a Coke Zero versus a Coke. You get the same flavor without the
Right.
other stuff. So.
We would like to try to make a non-alcoholic beer, and those have come a long ways from what they used to, but it is a very difficult process.
Right, I
because,
wondered.
Yeah, to get the flavors but also to not have alcohol in it is very difficult. But there are some companies here in the United States that are really developing, making great inroads into that. And I've read about some of these beers that they're making that are non-alcoholic that are still very tasty. So that's good.
Huh. I don't know. That's kind of like, for me, that'd be kind of like eating pretzels without salt, It's just,
Yeah.
That's an interesting connection, Mr. Robin. Eating pretzels without salt. I would have never put that.
Well, actually, the analogy I'd heard a long time ago was eating pretzels without salt is kind of like kissing your sister.
So drinking non-alcoholic beer is like kissing your sister.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't sound fun. Now you're just making it not sound fun anymore.
Plus, I'm moving into the creep. So, real quick, I just kind of wanted to move over and talk a little bit about what's going on over at Woodworks Distilling. You have a piece of that, yeah?
I do. I'm the landlord there, principally the landlord, but I do have a small piece of it. And David Wood, a fellow in my office who's kind of a serial investor in a lot of different things, and he and I. This was kind of about the time that I was courting the brewery. He and I met with a fellow that had an interest in making distilled. Well, actually, it was some kind of plum brandy, and Jim and I, his name is Jim Hatcher. We tasted this stuff, and God, this is just the worst stuff we've ever tasted. So we dismissed that and said, no, we're not going to do it. But then Jim was approached by a man by the name of David Wood, and David had, during the pandemic, had been talking about having a distillery put in part of in downtown Oklahoma City in one area. And he had actually even gone to the point of signing a letter of intent. He approached Jim, who was interested in investing with him, and Jim then sent him down to my office, and we talked. And the first thing I asked him, I said, well, where are you going to put your distillery? And David said, well, I was kind of thinking about downtown. I said, well, would you consider putting something up in Britton? And we had just purchased the new Ritz Theater, which was in terrible shape. It was probably in worse shape than the MadHopper and El Coyote buildings. And so David and I went up there and looked, and he said, this is perfect. And it was kind of one of these things. I was really surprised because we had just purchased the building, and it just all sort of fell together. And so David has been open for about a year now, and he's Rick Napey is our distributor here, and Rick is his wife is a friend of my wife's, and we've known Rick forever, and he has really gotten the brand out in liquor stores and bars and restaurants, and then recently the distillery has been doing contract distilling for another very popular brand of bourbon. And so it is just really, they are working really hard and have turned the corner, because, it's very difficult on these startup businesses. You've got to, particularly with beer or alcohol, you're always battling somebody for space on the, at the liquor store on the shelf.
Right.
But David, it's really going great guns now. I'm proud of him. So.
And what sort of spirits do you guys turn out there?
David, he makes two types of gin. Vodka. His vodka has been very popular, and in fact, he won. The distillery won an award recently for its vodka, and right now they're making bourbon. A lot of bourbon, and which is an interesting process. And one problem that David had up until recently was that there was a shortage of bourbon barrels in the United States, and so hence, if you can't, with bourbons, you have to age your whiskey in barrels that have been charred, and you can't use used barrels in that process because it doesn't impart the flavor that you get from the charred portions of the wood of the barrel. But he's resolved that now, and is able to crank out this bourbon. And so then he also makes a rye whiskey too, which is really good. And I never really been a whiskey drinker, but this rye whiskey is really good. I think he does a great job with it. And so I'm kind of partial to that one. But so in all, gins, vodka, and whiskeys.
Okay.
All right.
I for years I was a diehard, devoted fan of Jack Daniels, and in fact, I enjoyed it so much I didn't keep a bottle in the house because I would have crawled up inside of it a lot of times. But
right.
Recently, I've kind of opened myself up a little bit, and I started drinking rye, and boy, I really like that. I like the way it finishes.
You all need to come down to the distillery and try the rye and get you a bottle of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
It's really good.
Road trip.
It's great.
That's our next visit. Well,
yeah.
Speaking about rye, as a mixologist, I call myself, one of my favorite drinks to make, even to drink, is an old fashioned. And I'm partial to using a rye whiskey in my recipe. And so I always, if people are asking, oh, what would I use? I always turn them to the rye whiskey. I'm like, any of the rye is probably your best bet in one of those. Although some people want other things, just like regular, bourbon whiskey. But anyhow, just my little tidbit on rye.
Sure, that's interesting. That's to try that. Sounds good.
Okay, Steve, we're going to start wrapping this up. I sure appreciate your time today. I know you've got more irons in the fire than anybody else I know.
Than me. And that's impressive.
And Mikey's got a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it's my pleasure. And, if I was sitting here in the chair doing nothing all day, I just I couldn't do it. I just can't do that.
Yeah.
So I just got to keep perpetual motion. So
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Understand that.
We're saving you from a life of just lounging around.
exactly. So, well, thank you so much for
All right.
inviting me. It's great talking to you too.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Steve.
And we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye
You
bye.
bet. Bye.
Bye.
Mikey, I think you'll agree that was another great interview for our podcast.
Absolutely. It was very interesting to listen to Steve talk about, well, just his interest in brewing from a basically young age. I mean, I know high school, but I mean, to me, that's still pretty young to be getting interested in something of that nature. And then just carrying it kind of on his back through the years and just tapping back into it ever so gently and not letting those setbacks set him completely back. I think that's, sometimes people just give up completely in the fact that he didn't. And look where he is now.
Right.
With a great brewery. I mean, I enjoyed our little visit there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, over the years, he is, we have a small sort of circle of friends,
Right.
and we all stay in touch. And Steve would send photos of, at one point, he had a refrigerator in his garage that was solely dedicated to holding the keg of whatever he
had brewed. Yeah.
And coming through the door of the refrigerator was a tap. And so he was getting high on his own supply, I guess you could say. But
yeah, he had his own little kegerator.
Yeah.
He'd made.
Yeah.
We had kind of talked. I told him about my husband Brett's kind of dabbled in it a little bit, mostly in the wine part when he was talking about that dandelion wine. And I had told you and Steve about the time Brett used carrots because he was helping his mom with the catering, and they had all these carrot shavings, and he brought it home.
Carrot wine?
He made carrot wine. Yeah, I don't know if you were able to hear the story because I was telling it to Steve, but yeah, he had made carrot wine, and it really wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. I mean, one glass would put you on your ass, though. I mean, we're like, what is the alcohol content of this? So, yeah, it was wild. But, and he's had some interest in trying to brew. He's acquired a few things, but just never did it. But it's interesting, to hear Steve's story about the dandelions because I've made dandelion tea before. I never even thought about wine, but so, and I think Brett one time did watermelons, right? Or was it something else? There was another wine that you were. Oh yeah, that's right. We've failed several times as well, basically, is what I'm getting at. But
even if it's not terribly good, you can still drink it. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have a friend, or we had a friend out in Washington State. He was a retired chiropractor, and he made his own wine, but he referred to it as fortified wine. And somehow in the process, he would add a little bit of brandy to it.
Oh, yeah.
And the stuff was just, it was drinkable, certainly. And it would knock you flat on your ass if you weren't looking for it,
Right.
So.
Oh, yeah. That's how this was. And I've had some other homemade wines from different people, and they are definitely a higher alcohol content for sure. But I also think it was really, really cool that he is kind of helping in the revitalization of that area of Oklahoma City. I think that's really neat, especially with our interest in history and how we've touched on that here on the podcast too, that's also kind of a historic part of town. So we really encourage you guys, if you're in Oklahoma City or you're going there, or you're nearby, make a special trip down there. I mean, even if you want to give it the 3 or 4 months to have them finish the sidewalks, but
Yeah.
they're definitely making progress on that, and lots of artistic stuff. I mean, on the El Coyote, which is connected to the MadHopper, it was a restaurant at what was New Mexican style
New Mexican style cuisine.
Yeah, there was murals on the side, a piece of metal art, those little panels in the back of the parking lot with some really just neat stuff. It had a very wonderful energy and kind of niceness, and so to speak, to it when you were down there.
Yeah. And the food wasn't too bad either.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good. They have that salsa was.
Oh, that salsa.
Oh my
was
gosh, we're
incredible.
like, this is like the best ever.
Yeah.
So.
So just to run a couple of things down, we, meaning Mikey and myself, will be appearing at the May 3rd Spring Arts Expose in the Pioneer Room here in Woodward, Oklahoma. I think that's from 6 to 8.
No, 4 to 8.
4 to 8.
4 to 8.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Well, I think the piece of paper I gave you, the dates changed since then, because I visit those meetings, you know, so sometimes we're ever evolving things. But yeah, it's going to be in the Pioneer Room, but it's also in conjunction with the food truck throwdown, which has become a huge event. It's grown exponentially over the last few years, and really kind of bringing a fun, mid-spring, early summer type event that you can enjoy. And there's going to be artists in there, just as Robin and I. We're going to be promoting the podcast here, but also Robin's got, he'll have some of his books, which, if you like being entertained, all of Robin's books are very entertaining. And if you're a reader, they're definitely one that you want to get your hands on. And then I'll have some of my photography and some of my other art as well. So we invite you down. But Robin, tell them what we're doing after that.
So once the Spring Arts Expose wraps up, we're going to scoot across Centennial Park to the alley near the intersection of 8th and Main. And back in that alley, it's behind the Larry Cahill Studios,
which is 715 Main Street.
Excellent.
I got you.
Man. But back behind there, they have what they call the Court of Colors. And part of the building back there have been painted with murals and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and one of them is mine.
Yours. That's true.
So let's add that so people know.
Absolutely. And but they're having the first ever Red Plains Film Festival back there. It gets started, they say, at dark.
And they're saying about 8 p.m. is what they're kind of considering dark. Now, it may be a little after, depending on how dark it actually is, but...
And we received official notification last night via email that we've got 2 films that will be shown and become part of the competition for this film festival. One is a film that Mikey and I collaborated on to essentially hawk more books that included, that we're trying to sell in the museum. And we had made a short video and we did it in the style of a silent movie. And it's pretty funny stuff. And so
it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Yeah, that's right. You can look it up.
We're on the YouTube.
You can see that if you go to the Plains Indians and Pioneers Museum YouTube channel.
Subscribe to it.
Subscribe to it, please, because we're always adding content.
Yes, we
there.
are doing that.
So the other film is one that I did a few years ago. And it's kind of a documentary sort of promotional video about the history of historic Fort Supply. And I'm very grateful and honored that that's going to be shown. So we hope to see you over there. Stop by, say hi. We'll autograph anything you want autographed.
Within reason.
Within reason.
Within reason.
And so, again, that's May 3rd. That's a Friday night. And We sure hope to see you there. So we're going to wrap this thing up now, and we'll close by reminding everyone, as we always do, to stay hungry, stay foolish, and most importantly, stay weird. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.